A male satin bowerbird spends most of his life building something he will never live in. A bower, two walls of woven sticks, decorated, obsessively, with blue. Blue feathers, blue petals, blue plastic if he can steal it. The female never nests there. She comes only to judge it. And here is what a biologist named Gerald Borgia found, watching them in Australia in the early 1980s. The males do not just build, they raid. A male will cross into a rival's territory, tear his bower apart, and steal his best decorations. The better a male's own bower, the less often it gets destroyed. The worse it is, the more it gets wrecked. Sit with that. The blue decoration is not the point. The point is that it is hard to get and hard to keep. A signal only means something while most males cannot match it. So here is the question this episode answers. Why is it that the badge, the title, the luxury, the blue check mark, every status symbol you have ever wanted, stops working the exact moment everyone else can get one too? If you have ever bought the thing that was supposed to set you apart, and then watched it show up on everyone, and felt it quietly turn worthless in your hands, you already know this mechanism. You just weren't told a bird in a forest is running the same program. Rome. The color is purple. Not the purple in your head. Tyrian purple, a deep, blood-dark red violet pulled from a sea snail, drop by drop. It took thousands of crushed shellfish to dye a single cloak, and the dye was worth more by weight than gold. That is the whole reason it mattered. It was not beautiful so much as it was impossible to fake cheaply. So Rome did what every system does with a signal it cannot let everyone copy. It put the law around it. Across centuries, the rules tightened. Who could wear a purple stripe? How wide? Who could wear the solid color at all? By the late Empire, the deepest Tyrian purple was reserved for one man, the emperor. And wearing it without permission was not a fashion mistake. It was treason. And notice what that law admits. You do not need to forbid something worthless. You forbid it precisely because the signal still works, because people will claw their way toward it. The ban is a confession that the symbol is doing its job. The Emperor Nero, who loved the color, went further. He made the sale of Tyrian purple a crime, and at one of his own performances, the story goes, he had a woman in the audience stripped of her purple cloak on the spot. He had not run out of purple, he had run out of patience for sharing it. Here is the mechanism, and it is the same one in the forest. The dye's value came entirely from how hard it was to get. The moment more people could afford it, it stopped saying emperor and started saying merchant who got rich. So the law had to keep moving the line up, restricting, reserving, escalating, to keep the signal ahead of everyone trying to copy it. And it never worked for long. Within a few generations, the formula spread, cheaper imitation dyes appeared, and the most powerful color in the ancient world slowly became just another expensive thing. The empire could outlaw the cloak. It could not outlaw the one thing that actually destroys a status symbol: other people getting it. If you have ever watched a thing you loved because it was rare get copied, mass-produced, and ruined, and felt a little stupid for ever caring, then the next story is about you, dressed as someone else. Subscribe. Primal Loops finds this loop somewhere new every week. Versailles, the 1770s. The signal is no longer a color. It is hair. At the French court, a young queen named Marie Antoinette turned getting dressed into competition by other means. Her stylist, a marchand de modes named Rose Bertin, the first celebrity fashion designer in the modern sense, built hairstyles called poufs. Towers of hair, wire, fabric, and props, sometimes feet tall. A pouf could carry a model ship, a garden, a scene from the news. It was absurd. That was the point. It was so expensive, so impractical, so impossible to wear and work that only a woman with nothing to do but be looked at could afford it. The same rule the bowerbird obeys. The signal must cost more than a rival can pay. The court of Versailles wore on top of its heads. But a court is a copying machine. Every noblewoman watched the queen, and within a season the poufs were everywhere. And the moment they were everywhere, they stopped meaning queen. So the court did exactly what Rome did, what the bowerbird does. It escalated. Taller, stranger, more expensive. An arms race with no finish line, running on the simple fact that a signal everyone shares is a signal that has died. Set the politics aside for a moment. There were women at that court who could not actually afford this and did it anyway, who went into debt to a dressmaker to keep up with a hairstyle because falling behind the signal felt like falling out of the world. The account book survived. The bowerbird steals blue feathers. A countess borrowed against her estate for a tower of someone else's hair. Within 15 years, the heads that wore those poufs were being counted by a different kind of machine, in a square in Paris. The revolution had many causes, and a hairstyle was not one of them. But it is hard to miss what the crowd was looking at when they looked at the aristocracy. A class that had spent a fortune making itself unmistakably, unforgivably visible. Paris, the 1960s. The signal is a name. Pierre Cardin is one of the most gifted couturiers alive. Space-age dresses, a name that means the future. A Cardin label is, at the start of the decade, exactly what Tyrian purple was, a thing you cannot have unless you are among the few. And then Cardin makes a choice that no one of his stature had dared to make at that scale. He decides to license his name. Not to sell more dresses, to rent the word Cardin to anyone who will pay. First clothing, then ties, then luggage, pens, alarm clocks, frying pans, cigarettes. By the end, the Cardin name is on hundreds of products on every continent. He becomes extraordinarily rich. He is for a while the most commercially successful designer on earth. And here is the part the business schools sometimes skip. The same decision that made him rich is the one that quietly emptied the name of the only thing it had been selling. When Cardin is on a frying pan in a provincial shop, it can no longer whisper elite on a dress. He had taken the one asset a luxury name owns, scarcity, and he had spent it. He did not lose the name's value to a rival. He sold it, himself, one license at a time. The story luxury tells about itself is that it protects exclusivity at all costs. Read what actually happened to the most successful designer of his generation, and the story inverts. The surest way to destroy a status symbol is not to have it stolen. It is to win. To sell it to everyone who wants it, until wanting it is no longer rare. By the time Cardin tried, late in life, to buy the licenses back and rebuild the exclusivity he had sold, it was too late. You can outlaw the cloak. You cannot unring the bell. A signal, once shared with everyone, does not come home. Go back to Borgia's bowerbirds, because there is something the decorations were hiding from us. When researchers looked closely at what the females were actually choosing, it was not simply the male with the most blue. The decorations can be stolen. The bower can be wrecked and rebuilt. What a strong male demonstrates over a whole season is the one thing a rival cannot steal: the skill, the stamina, The relentless maintenance to keep the display standing while everyone tries to tear it down. The blue is a proxy. The real signal is the cost a weaker bird simply cannot pay. Which means the arms race is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. A status symbol made of a thing, a color, a hairstyle, a name, a logo, can always be copied, and the moment it is, it dies. And the strong escalate to a costlier thing, and that gets copied forever. That is the loop. Rome reserving purple for one man. Versailles stacking hair toward the ceiling. Cardin selling the future by the frying pan. None of them were foolish. They were all running the Bowerbirds program. The oldest arithmetic of status there is. A signal is worth exactly as much as the number of people who cannot have it. The instant that number drops, the signal is worthless, and the chase begins again, one rung higher, for something new and rare and doomed. The blue feather was never the point. The point was that you couldn't get one. A status symbol stops working the moment everyone has it, because the only thing it was ever doing was measuring who didn't. And a measure that includes everyone has stopped measuring anything. This is the loop Primal Loops exists to keep finding. The same instinct wearing a new logo each decade, certain this time it's different. Next week, we leave the marketplace entirely and find the same machine running in a place that sells nothing at all. Subscribe so you are in the room when it does. And before you close this, look at whatever you are using to tell people who you are right now. The brand on the bag, the blue check mark, the limited edition that turned out to be limited to anyone with the app, the follower count. Each one worked exactly until everyone could have it. Then it became, quietly, a frying pan with a famous name on it. So the only question left is the uncomfortable one. The next thing you buy to stand out. Are you buying the signal, or are you buying the short, doomed window before everyone else buys it too? Name the status symbol you watched die the moment it went mainstream. The one that used to mean something, and now means nothing. First one in the comments.